How's it going, dudes? So you're one of them there sports fans. Doesn't matter if it's a ball, puck, glove, or car, as long as someone is suffering a devastating loss, you're all for it. But you've got a problem on your hands. For all your love of the game, your chair is really comfy. So how do you combine your love of kicking off and kicking back into one easily purchasable product? With the board game version of duct tape and glitter glue. Sports board games are an incredible product line to just think about because they're combining two things that require completely opposite things from their players. Say what you want about your ultimate frisbee skills, I don't think that's gonna help you in Boggle. And except for the surprising overlap of NASCAR board game fans, you wouldn't think there'd be enough combined interest in both of these sources to warrant a whole subgenre of games. But if there is at least one customer that fits the bill, the board game boys will work overtime to shake every dollar out of that poor guy. So let's jump right in and start looking into the various attempts to bring your favorite sports off of the field and on to the table. Now, as those within the space will know, there are quite a few sports out there, and if I want this video to come out this year, I'll need to draw the line somewhere. So to keep this concise, I decided to limit eligible sports to those with professional leagues. And after doing that, I then discovered that there are a surprising number of professional leagues for even the most niche sports. So the 9 sports that made the cut will each have one game representing them on this list. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them are extremely weird, but all of them are interesting in one way or another. So let's start off this marathon by looking into one of the most popular sports across the globe, football. This isn't even the first time I've pulled this. You have got to stay on your toes. NFL Game Day. NFL Game Day gives players the opportunity to take control of their favorite NFL teams, with some of them being outdated because they have moved and some of them being outdated for other reasons. I don't care what anyone else says. They need to change that name right back to the Washington football team. NFL Game Day is a 1v1 football duel where players will take the field and attempt to either score or stop their opponent's drive. During a turn, one player plays offense and the other plays defense, using their cards to try to predict their opponent's moves and snag big plays. Whoever has the most points at the end of one full football game wins. NFL Game Day might be one of my favorite games of all time, and at the same time, this is one of the most frustrating experiences you can possibly subject yourself to. The standout feature of NFL Game Day is that each player takes their turn at the same time. Each player gets 5 cards depending on which side of the ball they are on, and once they select their play, they will reveal them together. The play will then resolve based on the chart below the play. For instance, a 10-yard run on a pass defense will result in a full 10-yard gain. Move the ball 10 yards forward and go again. If I had to compare this to another game, I'd say it's like football rock paper scissors. Very simple, this beats that gameplay loop that will keep you engaged with its speed. But it's that same loop that causes the darker half of this experience. Unwavering frustration. At least once in this game, there will be a drive where you get blasted on incorrect defensive call after incorrect defensive call, causing a drive that not only leaves your team broken, but has you feeling like an idiot. But your spirit remains unbroken, so when you draw the kickoff card and see that you muffed it and the other team scores an instant touchdown, the voices start to sound very reasonable with their demands. Runaway Machine, this game is a runaway factory. If you lose your composure, you are going to get easier and easier to read and predict, resulting in games like my last one where the score ended up being 62-3 at halftime. But always remember that just because you're down doesn't mean you're out, as there is legitimately no lead in this game that is too big to blow. That 62-3 halftime lead I had in the last game, the second half was a literal reversal, with the game ending at 65-65 as the other player forced overtime. As the coin is flipped, he calls it right, quotes word for word the famous "we want the ball and we're gonna score," and on the very first play of overtime, he runs a draw play that is fumbled for a defensive touchdown. A 62-point comeback completely ruined by one play call complete emotional devastation. I cannot recommend NFL Game Day enough. No other game will let you have this much fun while forcing you to hate yourself the entire time. It is a blast. But now that I've gotten our football out of my system, let's go ahead and give my international audience the football that they actually came here for, with the World Cup game. The World Cup game is the 2006 game that allows players to play through one of two World Cups: the 1930 tourney in Uruguay or the 2002 matches in Korea, Japan. The game accurately represents the competitors of each cup as well as their skill levels, and players try to guide their teams through each match in the hopes of taking them all the way to the World Cup final to bring home that trophy. To start the game, first choose which World Cup you will be running, the 1931 being shorter than 2002's, and start divvying up the teams represented in the group stage by drawing tiles. Each team in this game gets a color from this chart that shows how well they performed in that World Cup, and teams higher up on the color chart will get advantages like better card effects to showcase the skill gap of those squads. Once everyone has their teams, you start taking turns. On yours, you can play one of your cards to add goals to one of your teams, then draw a new one after. Goals can be added to one of your team's slots, the better teams of course getting more slots. And cards can also be played to attack, defend, or run some classic FIFA bribery to get goals taken away. Once all the cards are played, all the group stage scores are tally, and the top two teams from each group go to the next round, which halves the deck size. This loop continues until there are only two teams left, with the winner being crowned the World Cup champion. There is a ton of strategy behind how simple the game's moves are, because in addition of you trying to get your teams to advance, you want to make sure that you are stacking the future brackets with weak teams to give yours the best chance. You can do this because you are allowed to play any of your cards in any of the matches. So if one of your teams has a match locked up, you might start helping someone else's weaker team upset a powerhouse so you don't have to play them in the next round. But with everyone else also on this state of mind, these games are going to get messy fast, especially since the games mean more as the tournament continues. The size and scope of the game might end up scaring some people off, especially with how large the group stage is in the 2003 tournament, but once the game starts schmoovin', you should have a great time trying to rocket your way to the top of the world stage. But if the World Cup game is too large and complex for your liking, then buddy, you might as well sit right back down on that bench, because you stand absolutely no chance against the absolute gaming girth of Stratomatic Baseball. Stratomatic Baseball is the 1962 game that sees two players pick their lineups and play one full game of baseball. It's really just that easy. Here, let me walk you through one at-bat and you'll see just how simple this game is. First, you bring out your player identification cards for the batter and the pitcher. You've picked these and the rest of your full team lineup from the entire list of named players in the league for that season, each with their own individual player cards, and roll the white die. This will tell you which player chart and column to reference, either on the pitcher's or batter's card. And once you know that, you roll the blue dice. Based on their added total, you will see what the result of that at-bat is, and then the next batter steps up. But wait! The result will also tell you what happens to any runners that were on base, whether they advanced, stayed where they were, the whole shebang. And then the next batter steps up. But wait! If you did manage to hit the ball in field, you'll need to determine what base you advance to, which is determined by a D20 roll and a success rate measured by that player's real-world OBS for that season. And then the next batter steps up and— but wait! Before any of this happened, you might want to have your player steal second. So go ahead and try to steal by consulting that player's card to see their steal rating, to cross-reference that with the steal chart to determine the successful steal range, so you can roll the d20 to see if you manage to steal one base, then do everything that I previously mentioned to complete one at-bat, and then the next batter steps up and repeats the process. Everything that I just mentioned is how you complete one at-bat on the lowest complexity level available. They didn't just go overboard with the gameplay either. because Stratomatic has decided that it is completely reasonable to update the game with new statistics and players every year since its 1962 publication, as well as including sets for players that played before that time period as well. Meaning that if you've got the funds, you could reasonably expect to fill your team with any human being that has ever played a single pitch of professional baseball. I don't take comparisons like these lightly, but in terms of depth, this might be the baseball version of the Campaign for North Africa, the Desert War, 1940 to 43. Completely impossible to experience all its content, advanced rules that are almost impossible to understand unless you have a degree in them, an outright stupid amount of historical accuracy. There's more here than there seems. Stratomatic has a little more love for its fans though, as it's also evolved to include computer add-ons to help do the dirty work calculations, and can even get more accurate by determining success rates by using the real-world players' stats to bring out percentage success levels. An honestly absurd amount of detail behind a game where you hit a ball with a stick, but one I'm sure those number-obsessed baseball fans are going to love playing over and over again. But when you sit down for a round of Stratomatic action, you're going to be sitting there for quite a while, especially if you're taking on the project solo. So before you start off a game for the ages, make sure that you'll be comfortable the whole time with today's sponsor, FlexiSpot. Board games are a genre that encompass many different types of titles, but one thing that most of them have in common is that you're going to be sitting for quite some time while playing them. Normal chairs are not really equipped for extended seating periods. After a while, the unforgiving stiffness of the seat will start to wear on your back and bottom, on top of how they hold nearly no flexibility for different sitting styles. I've literally broken the top bar of 2 of my chairs because I kept trying to lean back in them, and this one's holding on for dear life. That's where FlexiSpot's C7 ergonomic chair comes in, supporting you on your seated quest while keeping you comfortable the whole way through. With the C7's dynamic adjustment abilities, the chair will adjust to the way you like to sit, while still providing crucial support to areas like your lower and upper back. So after completing one full at-bat in the board game equivalent of filling out a tax return, you can lean back into some much needed relaxation before you get back into the hot action. The C7 can support up to 300 pounds, so if you need to keep your prized possessions safe from harm, you can hold on to them while playing, no matter how unwieldy. Looking for a less fancy option that still brings the necessary comfort? The FlexiSpot C2 chair works to make sure that the whole group can play on an equal comfort level, especially if you're a store owner looking to give your players an environment they can't get anywhere else. It's the little things that set you apart from your competition, so when your players are deciding where they would want to play their games, the relaxation that your C2 chairs provide could be the clincher that keeps them coming back. The FlexiSpot C7 and C2 chairs come with a 30-day free return period, perfect for testing how they can help improve your setup. Go ahead and click the links in the description to check out the C7 and C2 for yourself, and hit the table without taking a hit to comfort. Thank you to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. Now let's check in with the other sports that decided to take a crack at the board gaming scene. Transitioning away from Stratomatic's numbers game to prevent my brain melt from flaring back up, we're instead going to go to a board game that requires absolutely no brains, just pure skill. Let's hit the links, boys. It's time to play some golf. Table Golf Association. The TGA has players either build pre-designed holes or their own holes to play through by flicking the rolling balls with precision. Players must use their skill to play through both the wind and obstacles, which could cause a worse shot or several other penalties. The game can either be played single match or as a league. In either case, the player with the lowest score wins. This title is way different than your standard board game, instead relying more on a player's dexterity than their strategy. But that doesn't mean that this game is brain dead, as with effects like wind and max shot distance, you are going to need to plan out your strokes if you are going to avoid these hazards. Wind is determined with the die in the spinner, and can end up with effects like making your ball move one space left of where it lands, which can be devastating if that rolls you into one of the game's many obstacles. Hazards are a tricky concept to approach in these types of games, but I think the way they've done it here is actually really creative. Landing your ball in a hazard will require you to change up your shot, just like how hazards make shots in real golf more difficult. For instance, if your ball lands in a sand trap, instead of flicking the ball like normal, you will need to flick the ball with the thumb of your non-dominant hand. There doesn't seem to be any stipulations for ambidextrous players, so to keep it fair, if they land in a hazard, just have them flick it with their toes. This game has an immense amount of replayability to it. With holes being able to be customized to your desire, there are a nearly endless amount of hole combinations you could put together. Especially if you decide to put together a league with friends. You could play an entire TGA season over multiple sessions for either the trophy included in the box or any other predetermined prize. Whoever's the best tabletop golfer gets to run the homeowners association that year. Bet it's a better system than whatever you have now. But the TGA are not the only ones trying new and innovative board gaming ideas, as the National Basketball Association has also stepped into the ring in an attempt to bring this medium into the future through augmented reality technology. This can only end well. Flex NBA is a 1v1 tile battler that uses real NBA players as your units. Players are represented by their flexagons and utilize their power and skills to flex on their ops during the game. Oh goodness sakes, who let Gen Alpha into the design room? Utilize special moves and the dice to devastate your opponent's confidence points. The first player to reduce all their opponent's CP to 0 when they did not!
Only 4 elements of the flexagon matter: how much CP the flexagon has.
Utilizing your flexagons to their max is essential, as depending on what type your flexagon is, they might be weaker or stronger against other types, indicated by whether they are soft or ballin'. Oh, it's sure getting up there. The game itself is very similar mechanically to some trading card games like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic. Doubly so since the main thing I've been showing off is just the starter set, and you can buy expansions to nab other NBA stars. In fact, they've outright said that the only reason they don't call themselves a TCG is because their NBA license won't let them, so they go with Battle Tile Game instead. We have seen so much whack crap in this game already, and we haven't even gotten to the main selling point of the title: the augmented reality. You see, using the Flex NBA companion app, you are able to scan your flexagons to show off the virtual players hidden inside, which include their player models and any special animations they may have. But the flexagons also have another feature for customers, as each individual tile comes with a unique barcode that players can register in the database to claim ownership of. Again, from the company, per our NBA license, we cannot use the word NFT or blockchain, but that's what it actually is. Hey, you know what else signifies ownership of that tile? Physically having it in your possession, which you already do because you paid for it. This is such a simple game at its core. It's just a character dueler. And yet they've pumped it so full of nonsense that it's become a genuine trial to wrap my head around it all. I must say though, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit interested in trying this one out due to all the craziness on display. Give me an AR version of all-time GOAT David West and my ops are getting cooked on that court, FR no cap. But seeing as this one got a little far away from the whole actually playing the sport part of the game, let's jump to a title that goes back to putting you in the skates of the players from the comfort of your chair. Trickshot is the 2021 board game that brings the ice-cold hockey action to your table. Players take control of their squad and activate pieces to move them and the puck around the board, trying to finagle their way through their opponent's defense and get to the goal. When you move, you'll roll the dice to see if your opponent can react to your move or if you commit an error, with each consecutive move adding another die to make it more risky. Use special abilities, strategy, and luck to outmaneuver your opposition. Whoever scores more goals in 3 10-turn periods wins. Trickshot tries to carry over as much accuracy of a standard hockey game as possible, while simplifying player movement so that anyone can play. Defense in Trickshot heavily relies on line of sight, as if the offense doesn't have a clean line to their teammates or the goal, they'll need to make much riskier plays to try and get through. But don't you worry if you get stuck with a bad roll, as each player gets some stamina bars that can be used to re-roll the dice once, signified by the bench. This is exactly what you'd expect from a sports board game, a miniaturized version of the game that utilizes unique mechanics to transfer the gameplay of that sport to a much smaller scale that anyone can enjoy. And players seem to agree, as this is one of the highest rated sports games on Board Game Geek. So if you're looking for a game that'll let you get your hockey fix without having to punch a man in body armor, you'll seldom find better options than this one. But I believe that will be the last standard board game that we will be covering today, as the remaining titles are either so poorly executed or have such wildly absurd ideas that every time I looked at another one, it left me in a state of complete bewilderment. Let's start off this group of goofs with a fan favorite tournament title, 15 Love. I hope it qualifies for the sequel, man. One of the craziest runs out of the whole field came from this face right here. Instead of running my usual introduction, I'm going to instead read off the front of this box, which describes who I guess is the main character of tennis. And you let me know what kind of impression this game leaves on you. Big Skalderhead, leading tennis hustler, Eastern Seaboard. Once won $12,000 playing with one foot tied to a concrete block. Started tennis at age 3. Plays tennis like Spassky plays chess. Says, a smart tennis player can beat a strong tennis player 5 games out of 7. This game shows what he means. What I have just read to you is the introduction to one of the most boring games of all time. How 15 Love works is one player will roll their 2 dice to serve the ball, while the other player rolls their 2 dice to move their player in a position where they can return it. The dice are then rolled again for that hit, and this loop continues until someone wins. This is literally all you do in the entire game. You roll dice to see how far your players can move and try to get them into a position where they can return the ball. There is nothing else on offer here. But if unending repetitive rolling wasn't enough, you get the prestigious privilege to continue to do this for the entire duration of a full tennis match. It's not even like there's a ton of strategy here like they claim, as there are optimal positions for your player to be to maximize return probability. So you're just going to be rolling back and forth until someone gets lucky enough to squeak one by. Repeat for several hours. The sheer denseness of this game is what allowed it to pull off some crazy upsets in the worst board game of all time tournament. But goodness sakes, could you imagine just going back and forth like this for the entire duration of a match? I'd say your fingers would give out after a while, but you probably wouldn't notice because your brain would have turned on autopilot by then. But that was an interesting idea that was poorly executed. Let's shake things up here by heading to a game that has quite possibly the craziest movement mechanic out of any game that I've ever covered. Ladies and gentlemen, Raceway Alley. Raceway Alley is a racing game that sees players pick their cars and try to race past the opposition with skill and strategy. First player to complete the required number of laps wins. You might think that we've finally reached the highly anticipated racing board game, but no, those are probably going to get their own video. So which sport is being represented by Raceway Alley? Believe it or not, bowling. Yes, this is a bowling board game, but not in the way that the other sports games were. As if you are looking to play bowling on your table, then there are plenty of small bowling sets that will let you do just that. Instead, Raceway Alley has set itself apart from the crowd by following a different path, as while other games have you play them instead of their sport, Raceway Alley is played while you are bowling. That crazy movement mechanic that I mentioned, the speed that your car moves around the track is directly tied to how well you bowl in real life. The more pins you hit, the more spaces you move. But while constantly maxing out your pin total can give you good odds, keeping your eye on the track and purposefully bowling worse could be what you need to take the edge. The board contains shortcuts and speed boosts for players that land on specific spaces. So if you have the skill needed to sabotage your own shots, you could end up turning that into the play you need to snag the lead. But Cam, due to an ancient family curse, I'm forever plagued with abysmal bowling abilities. Am I just gonna get my teeth kicked in every time I play this game? Worry not, for they've taken the accursed into account. Depending on your bowling skill level, you can roll the dice to see how many pins need to be knocked down to be considered a strike. So even those who always need the bumpers can have the incredible opportunity to have a lead on the final lap before slamming into the turn 4 wall. This has to be one of the most unique board game ideas I have ever seen. Now, would I play it? Probably not. I prefer to play one game at a time. But I can definitely see how this would add another layer to a trip to the bowling alley. If you are one strike away from winning the race and you're up to bowl, not a single person there is going to lay off the pressure for a second. But as you are well aware if you've been on this channel before, I always save the strangest for last. And while Raceway Alley is one of the most interesting board game ideas out there, our final game has decided that out of every single sport on offer in the entire world, We needed to make a game based on competitive eating. Yes, it does qualify as a sport. Don't forget that Major League Eating is an organization that exists. These people are professionals. Gurgitate, the game of competitive eating. Gurgitate sees players duke it out in a contest of increasing ingestion, as they compete to see who can eat the most food in the allotted time limit. Players select their professional eater and draw a card, which will give them a number. That number is cross-referenced with their skill level for the food item they are eating, which will determine how much they were able to eat during 1 minute. Whoever ate the most food when the contest ends is crowned the Eating Emperor. This game is extremely simple in its gameplay. It's really just draw a card, consult the chart, and write down your result. But where it lacks in complex mechanics, it makes up for in replayability and unpredictability. There are 17 different food competitions that you can compete in, including hot dogs, hamburgers, meatballs, ribs, jalapenos, the whole gosh dang pyramid is here. And every single one of the professional eaters you can choose from have their own strengths and weaknesses in which foods they specialize in. As a result, every match is going to be different, even if you use the same people, as a cheeseburger specialist is going to struggle to keep up in a rib eating contest, and vice versa. But just because you know how to down the dogs doesn't mean your victory is guaranteed. Specialists are more likely to do better, but anything can happen during a contest, like a bad run of minutes, penalties, or disqualifications, and quite literally choking away a lead. Now, this game does have one caveat that will prevent it from being enjoyed by most people. It is a print and play game, which means that you will be downloading and printing off the files yourself to enjoy at home. This means that it is going to come with no artwork or nothing to help keep track of the scores, just the absolute bare essentials for the game to function properly. But as a trade-off for that, the game is completely free to the public. The only thing it will cost you to play this game is the paper you use to print it on, and with a little bit of elbow grease, it can be made to resemble a proper title sold at stores. I highly recommend checking out this video by Dave Gardner if you're interested. He not only shows you how to play the game, but also how to use Excel to make the game a quick-paced, action-packed affair. If you'd like to take a crack at this one, I'll put the webpage in the description. It'll be tricky to put together, but it is a game about competitive eating that is free, so I'd say it's a fair trade. I wasn't able to cover every sports board game out there, and I wish I could. There were a lot more weirdos. But from what I've seen, this entire genre turned out to be exactly what I thought it would be. There's just something special about having an entire genre focused around cramming sports into a format they were not designed for and just seeing what happens. And seeing how every single one of them plays completely different to the others is just wild from a design perspective. In fact, I have been motivated by these titles to create my own addition to the genre. Inspired by Raceway Alley, it's Combat Cornhole, an MMA-regulated octagon fight where every body blow allows you to toss another bag at the board. Comes with 37 pages of waivers and enough planks of wood to build your own arena. Have fun, kids! Signing off for Lawn Darts 2, I am KamSandwich. Thank you for watching and have a fantastic day. A special thank you to my suppliers, staff, and chefs over at the deli. If you'd like to join the crew, you can take a look using the link in the description below.